Welcome to Coffee with Viking. I am Mike. Cheers. Haggai, putting God on hold for 18 years. Israel's holiest site on earth, the Jerusalem Temple, is a rock pile. Invaders from Babylon in what is now Iraq tore down most of the city in 586 BC and then deported the Jews to Babylon. That exile lasted about 50 years until 539 BC. When Persians from what is now Iran defeated Babylon and freed the political prisoners, the Persian Emperor Cyrus respected religion, and he gave the freed prisoners his blessing to rebuild their temples. He said so in a clay document that was survived from his reign, the Cyrus Cylinder. In this document, he asked the freed prisoners to do him a favor, say a prayer for me. About 50,000 Jews returned in the first wave back to Israel. They quickly built a foundation for a new temple, but the work stopped when a new emperor came to the throne. Non-Jewish settlers in the Jewish homeland complained to this emperor about the rebuilding project. They said the Jews had a long history of rebelling against empires. First the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, and perhaps the Persians next. The emperor halted the work, and for the next 18 years the Jews went about their business, living without their temple. They didn't seem to appeal the emperor's decision, not even after a new emperor arrived in year 17. In the fall of year 18, after what appears to have been a terrible year for the crops, Haggai calls on the Jews to finish rebuilding the temple. Only then will God bless the land again, Haggai warns. By this time, the Jews have been without a temple for 66 years. An entire generation of Jews has learned to live without it. Haggai must feel that if the temple isn't rebuilt soon, there will be no one left with memories of the old temple or with the desire to build a new one. The main point of this book: if the Jewish people pick up where they left off nearly 2 decades earlier and finish rebuilding the Jerusalem temple, then Babylon demolished, God will end the drought and bless the nation. The writer, the prophet Haggai, is the writer. He's possibly an old man, since he seems to remember how majestic Solomon's temple looked before the Babylonians tore it down 66 years earlier. If he was an elderly man at the time, that could help explain why his ministry was so short. The date: Haggai delivers his prophecies during a span of just 4 months, August 29th to December 18th, 520 BC. The dates are usually precise because Haggai identifies the day, month, and year along with historical landmarks preserved in dated Persian records. Haggai begins his work about 18 years after the first wave of Jews returned from exile in Babylon, and the location of this writing was in Jerusalem. God built me a house. God build me a house. Haggai 1, 3 and 4. The Lord sent this message through the prophet Haggai. Why are you living in luxurious houses while my house lies in ruins? The prophet Haggai takes his message to the top. Jewish official Zerubbabel, governor of what used to be the southern nation of Judah. Now it's the Persian province of Judah. Though Zerubbabel is just a governor, he's a descendant of King David and the lead candidate for king in Judah. Even regains its He's a descendant of King David and the lead candidate for king if Judah ever regains its independence. It's late in August when most crops have been harvested. Apparently, it has been a tough year for farmers and herders, the two main jobs of Jews at the time. Quoting God, Haggai says, I have called for a drought on your fields and hills, a drought to wither the grain and grapes and olive trees and all your other crops, a drought to starve you in your livestock and to ruin everything you have worked so hard to get. Haggai 1:11. This is just one of Haggai's several warnings, which are based on curses and blessings from the nearly 1,000-year-old laws of Moses. 1. Bad harvest. Deuteronomy 28:38. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. 2. Food shortages. Deuteronomy 8:10. When thou hast eaten and art full, then thou shalt bless the Lord thy God for the good land which he hath given thee. And the lack of clothing. Deuteronomy 10:18. He doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. Haggai's point is that these curses will remain Judah's fate until the temple is rebuilt. He drives home this message with a piece of logic that even the most uneducated could understand. The Jews have been living in homes for 18 years, so isn't it about time to build a home for God? Many people throughout Haggai's world think of temples as the earthly dwelling place of the gods. So do the Jews, though they understand that God isn't limited to the temple. Solomon expressed this eloquently when he started planning the first temple. This must be a magnificent temple because our God is greater than all other gods. But who can really build him a worthy home? Not even the highest heavens can contain him. 2 Chronicles 2:5-6. By law, the temple becomes the one and only place where God accepts sacrifices. Be careful not to sacrifice your burnt offerings just anywhere you like. You may do so only at the place the Lord will choose within one of your tribal territories. There you must offer your burnt offerings. Deuteronomy 12:13 and 14. I have heard your prayers, God tells Solomon, and I have chosen this temple as the place for making sacrifices. 2 Chronicles 7:12. The work begins. They began to work on the house of their God on September 1st of the second year of King Darius's reign. Haggai 1:14 and 15. Zerubbabel believes Haggai's message and enthusiastically jumps into the building projects. It takes him only about 3 weeks to get organized. Then the work begins. And here is the temple timeline, 1,000 years of history. From 967 BC, Solomon starts first temple. 960, temple completed. 622, Josiah repairs aging temple. 586, Babylonians destroy temple. 536, Jews lay foundation for second temple. August 29th, 520, Haggai tells Jews to finish the building. September 21st, 520, work resumes. March 12th, 515, second temple completed. 20, Herod starts expanding temple. AD 64, Herod's renovation complete. AD 70, Romans destroy temple. 691 AD, Muslims build dome of the rock on Temple Mount. There's a picture of the timeline. Darius the Great has been on the throne for more than a year, the first of his 35 years as emperor of Persia. Ezra's book fills in the gaps about what happens after the building starts, even mentioning Haggai by name. Non-Jewish settlers don't want to see the Jewish nation rebuilt, so they file a complaint with Darius. They remind him that a previous emperor, Artaxerxes, ordered the work stopped because the Jews' tendency for rebellion. Darius asked his archivist to check this in the royal records. The archivist does confirm Artaxerxes' order, but he also finds the original ruling by Cyrus. This ruling not only gives the Jews permission to rebuild the temple, it orders their neighbors to pay for it. I hereby decree, Darius writes, that you are to help these elders of the Jews as they rebuild this temple of God. You must pay the full construction cost without delay from my taxes collected in the province west of the Euphrates River, so that the work will not be interrupted. And that's in Ezra 6:8. A month into the rebuilding, Haggai admits that the temple isn't shaping up to look like much, at least not compared to Solomon's temple. But Haggai promises the future glory of this temple will be greater than its past glory. Haggai 2:9. This is a promise that has to wait for 500 years. Ezra reports that Zerubbabel's temple is finished on March 12, 515 BC. Some 4.5 years after the work started, not until 20 BC, does King Herod the Great launch such an expansion and upgrade to Jerusalem's second temple that many Bible historians refer to it as the third temple, and by far the largest and most majestic. Herod even expands the hilltop and shores it up with retaining walls, and one of which survives. The western wall, sometimes called the Wailing Wall. Work continues for more than 80 years, finally ending in AD 64. Shekel for shekel, Zerubbabel's temple, the most modest of the three, is the best buy. It lasts longer than Herod's temple and Solomon's temple combined. In fact, the more elegant the temple, the shorter its lifespan. Herod's temple, the most magnificent of all, survived only 6 years. The Romans tore it down in AD 70 while crushing a Jewish revolt. Solomon's temple lasted 400 years before Babylonians pulled it down, but Zerubbabel's temple survived 500 years before Herod began the makeover, and almost a century beyond that. Stay blessed. Stay caffeinated. Much love.